Want to win the inventory game? With Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer, you can lock in trade-ins before your competitors even blink. Faster deals, better margins, lock in and load up today at b2b.kbb.com.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Nissan talks with Ford and Stellantis about sharing an electrified model. A fire at an aluminum supplier could disrupt business for months. And Jeep is dropping the Wagoneer while the Grand Wagoneer lives on. Plus, experts weigh in on how automakers and retailers can diversify their businesses with new revenue streams.
You've got to have this really strong link between the software and the consumer.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Nissan is in talks with multiple automakers to supply an electrified vehicle based on its top-selling Rogue crossover. That's according to two people with knowledge of the talks who spoke with us at Automotive News. According to one of the people, the potential partners include Ford and Stellantis, but not General Motors. The compact crossover would feature Nissan's e-Power hybrid system, which uses a battery-powered electric motor to drive the wheels and a gasoline engine to recharge the battery. Nissan would assemble the vehicle alongside the Rogue in Smyrna, Tennessee. We'll hear more about this story in a minute with our own Urvash Kakaria. A fire that broke out at Novelis's New York plant in Oswego will disrupt business at Ford and other automakers for months. That's according to a report by the Wall Street Journal. Ford is the biggest user of the plant's aluminum. People familiar with the matter say the automaker will likely flag potential implications of the setback to investors when it discloses quarterly financial results later this month. Novelis is the world's largest recycler of aluminum. It reported a fire incident at its Oswego plant on September 16th. No one was injured. President Donald Trump says 25% duties on medium and heavy-duty trucks would begin on November 1st. The proposal has been subject to an intense lobbying campaign by Detroit 3 automakers. Trump originally said last month that heavy-duty truck levies would start October 1st, but that timeline slipped as officials heard appeals from companies concerned about the impact. And Jeep is dropping the three-row Wagoneer SUV after the 2025 model year. Meanwhile, the Grand Wagoneer will soldier on as the brand's largest and most luxurious model. The move comes ahead of the fourth quarter arrival of the freshened 2026 Grand Wagoneer. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Automotive News Atlanta Bureau Chief Urvash Kakaria broke the news today about Nissan's effort to get a partner to share a hybrid or EV model. He spoke with our own Jake Neer about it this morning.
Urvash Kakaria, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
I'm going to start you off with a curveball here. Urvash, have you ever worked in an ice cream parlor?
I have not. I've been in an ice cream parlor more than I'd like to be, but I haven't worked there.
Well, you would have fooled me because you keep giving us all these scoops. And
That's
now that
embarrassing.
Kel is thoroughly horrified listening to this right now, we can go back to the subject matter. In all seriousness, I'm curious what Nissan would get out of a deal like this, other than the obvious that they get a model, and especially what would a potential partner get out of a deal like this?
Sure. So for Nissan, I mean, obviously Nissan is, financially struggling. It's trying to turn the business around from its steepest financial loss in a quarter of a century. So everything it can do to reduce the cost of product development and manufacturing is helpful. So in this case, if they develop a model and they share it with, another OEM, they're going to get substantially more volume. And not only does that reduce the cost of development, but it also reduces the cost of manufacturing, and it helps Nissan utilize its US factories more. And that's one of its biggest challenges. So this vehicle will be built in Smyrna, Tennessee, by Nissan. And that factory has an annual production capacity of 640,000 units. And it has a utilization rate of about half that, so 51%. So as much as Nissan can add volume to a model, it helps them in multiple ways. Now, regarding the OEMs, Stellantis and Ford are said to be, negotiating or at the negotiating table with Nissan. In Stellantis's case, the company is trying to, stock up its mainstream brands, but Dodge and Chrysler are sort of being starved of product. And maybe this vehicle, which is a compact hybrid crossover, could be a replacement of the imported Hornet, the Dodge Hornet. And it could also, for Chrysler, it could also be a niche product that they can sort of add, that Stellantis can add to the lineup. So that's how Chrysler might benefit. From Ford's perspective, Ford has sort of focused on affordable electric vehicles, but they now also need to pay more attention to their mainstream gas-powered models while they make this EV transition. And maybe bumping the Corsair or the Escape from the lineup was a bit premature for the company. And that forced Ford to sort of rely on the Bronco Sport and Maverick to fill the gap. And maybe this vehicle will help sort of address that gap, that challenge that Ford faces, because both those models are made in Mexico and are imported and therefore face tariffs. So maybe this helps Ford offset that issue.
Nissan has some very ambitious electrification plans. If a partnership does not materialize here, what would that mean for those plans?
I mean, it's just going to make the math harder, but I think Nissan is committed. They see that there's no other option, that EVs are going to be needed, are going to be required. Most likely when, the next presidential administration comes to power, if it's the Democrats, it's going to basically be somewhat of a reversal of the current administration's policies. So they know that they need to have EVs. The question is, when does that happen, and how do they, get there in a sustainable way from a price standpoint, from a cost standpoint? So they've basically canceled. They have these grand plans of having 5 EVs by the end of the decade. Now that's the sedans. There were 2 sedans and there were 2 crossovers. The sedans have essentially been killed because, there's really no market there's a dwindling market for sedans in the US. The SUVs have basically been put on ice, pardon the pun, because, they're trying to figure out, okay, the volumes that we had anticipated for these crossovers were this, and now they're this. And how do we reduce the cost of the models, or do we have to think of a entirely different platform that's more cost efficient, so that we can make the math work?
Urvaksh, thank you again so much, and really appreciate your reporting on this story, and we'll be paying close attention to it. We know you will be too, and keeping us up to date. Thanks again for joining us on Daily Drive.
My pleasure, Jake. Have a good day.
Coming up, a panel of experts talks about how automakers and dealers can lock in new revenue streams in 2025. That's next on Daily Drive.
Automotive News Shift podcast brings you the latest on automotive technology, trends, and transformation. I'm Hannah Lutz.
And I'm Molly Boygon. We're the new co-hosts of Shift, and we're excited to bring you new conversations with experts and industry insiders like this one with Larry Dominique, president of LD Management Consulting.
I do believe the legacy OEMs are falling into a trap. They've got to find a way to, in some ways, build a new airplane while they're still in flight.
Catch Shift, available every Sunday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Inventory is tight, competition is fierce, but Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer gives you the edge. With direct access to consumer trade-ins, you can lock in more of the used inventory you need and load up your lot. Dealers using Instant Cash Offer cut cost to market by 3.7% and close deals faster with new tools like counteroffer. That means more margin, less hassle. Whether you're looking to boost your used car pipeline or streamline your acquisition strategy, it's time to lock in and load up. Visit b2b.kbb.com to request your demo and see how Kelley Blue Book can help you win more deals more often.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Innovative technologies such as in-car software subscriptions present new revenue stream opportunities for automakers and vehicle retailers alike, if those advancements click with consumers. That's according to a panel of industry experts who spoke with our own Molly Boygon at Automotive News Congress in Detroit last month. Aruna Anand is president and CEO of Amovio North America. Jason Jameson is Chief Customer Officer at Here Technologies. Paul Thomas is president of Bosch North America. And Alan Wexler is Senior Vice President of Strategy and Transformation at General Motors. Here's a piece of their conversation.
When I think about the customer experience and also this kind of avoiding people feeling like they're being bombarded with advertising and just constantly being sold to, I think about that same dynamic with AI in the vehicle. Aruna, can you talk about some of the opportunities with AI in the vehicle?
Yes. First is, you don't want to use AI just because it's cool and everybody says AI. You need to have a reason and a good use case. One of the things that we have done, for example, in collaborating with Google, some of the use cases is how car has become an extension of our living room, so to say. You want to have that seamless experience when you're inside your vehicle. And that starts with how you enter the vehicle. Your vehicle automatically recognizing you for who you are without you having to press a button or come close and so on and so forth. And having these or your lift gate opening when your hands are full, it already can detect who you are and do those personalized action because your car knows it's just you. And then as you drive, maybe it provides you contextual information. Hey, you have a doctor's appointment coming up, or your last one was 2 months ago. Do you want to schedule one? I could do it for you. Things like that, which prove to be really efficient for the end user. Otherwise, as you mentioned, it is very distracting. And the challenge is what information is relevant and what information is found effective, that we are able to then monetize that. Because not all some of this stuff, you do it for branding and convenience and safety and to have that extension, you don't monetize those things. You can't. And then to understand, okay, what are those things that can be easily monetized? And then maybe we wait for the next round to talk more about that.
Yes, great idea. I want to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls that we've sort of touched on so far. So Aruna, you mentioned, making sure that information is relevant, that the technology in the vehicle is not distracting. Drivers and companies have a lot of concerns about data privacy and functional safety. Paul, can you kind of run us through how the industry is thinking about this and addressing this issue?
First, I want to just frame at least my view when we start talking about how to make money with software in vehicles. I think right now, when you look at the history of where we are with cars, and we all have these dreamscape images, we've seen them before, tons of videos, get in your car, virtual assistants, drive you to coffee shops, all these great things. But before we can get there, I think there needs to also be a fundamental belief that software-defined mobility has to create, from today forward, the separation between hardware and software. Before we can have these activities where we're trying to do all these great things in a vehicle, you've got to have this really strong link between the software and the consumer. And where the consumers can then, leading to your question, where the consumers can not be concerned is that when their data is being collected or when they're sharing information with the vehicle, they've got to feel that that software platform, similar to your iOS or your Android software, is robust. And I think that's where we are right now, at least in my mind, with the software-defined mobility, is creating the separation between hardware and software and then making the software a household name that's robust enough and strong enough that consumers feel real comfortable using it. If you have a lot of bespoke solutions in software, you all know you'll get certain devices that ask you to scan a QR code and sign up for software that you don't really want, but you have to use that software to have maybe a house camera work or a light switch in your house or a smart switch. People don't want that. And I think we need to deliver some level of trusted software from both a reliability, a sustainability, and then, of course, a security standpoint.
With consumer electronics, I feel like the consumer awareness of some of those household names, like I'm thinking about Apple iOS, took so long to sort of be absorbed. Do you have concerns about, even if there is a standard platform across the industry, that consumers would sort of fail to recognize that?
Well, the one reason why I'd like a common solution across the industry is it's so expensive to develop multiple solutions. So if you have multiple solutions with multiple generations of the way you collect data, the way you manage data, you won't find a framework that works financially, right? So first of all, if it doesn't work financially, no one will buy it. The consumer won't afford it, and no one will use it. As far as how you make the move to, I won't use the word household name, but how you get something that's robust through our strong partnerships with our OEMs like General Motors or some of the other OEMs we use, that's where the value needs to come, right? Because the consumer will buy from them, and they need to have this trusted software in their vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Aruna, it looks like you want to jump in.
Yeah, I want to just talk a little bit more about the security and the cyber security aspects. Now you have big compute modules, and you put a lot of things in there. Most of your product functions are in there. And so there's a lot of risk involved, and we need to take care of cybersecurity. Then you have as well what you mentioned, all the technology companies like Google or Apple and so on that want to integrate more. And it's nice to provide that seamless experience. And that's where automotive suppliers also come into play, because you need to have expertise in integrating IT solutions into the automotive environment that follows all these safety standards. At the end of the day, a car is needed to drive us from point A to point B in a safe manner. And if it can be fun and exciting along the way, that's great, but we shouldn't lose that focus. And that's when we are one of the very few companies, the first and very few companies to be considered as a technology provider, to be able to work with the Googles and Apples of the world to integrate those technologies alongside the OEMs into the vehicle. So it is cybersecurity ready, let's say.
I want to talk a little bit more about the role of big tech in all of this, because, for years, a significant consumer touch point, the central infotainment display, has been ceded to big tech through smartphone mirroring services like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. How are automakers reclaiming the infotainment experience? Let's throw to Alan.
Sure. Love the question. For us, we really feel as if we need an integrated, seamless experience for our customers, and one that we can control. Control from the perspective of we want to delight our customers in a unique way from a competitive perspective, but we also are not trying to do everything on our own. So similar to the platform question, like it's in our best interest if we can find commonality relative to working with Google and working with Apple and others to build a common platform. So someday we can invite app developers and others to this common platform. For us, our partners, yesterday we just went live with Disney Plus in our passenger screens. Last month was Tubi. We have Spotify. A partner we're really proud of is working with Amazon and Tidal and Dolby Atmos. So for those who aren't aware, Optique, I believe it has 17 speakers in it. If you've experienced Dolby Atmos in an Optique, and Vistique is, I think, 19 speakers. The immersive experience that you're getting from a sound perspective is unlike anything. You can't get it in your home. And eventually, when we get to like full autonomy, those experiences that we need to create, we don't expect to do them on our own. So Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, they're all like very strong partners of ours to help us get there.
So it sounds like you see them as not using the infotainment display as an opportunity to mirror their own software, but partners in eventually developing a larger app ecosystem for access to different functions, capabilities in the vehicle.
100%. So you have access to things like Audible through the Play Store, but for us, it's less about screen takeover and just mirror imaging your phone. I think everyone's aware of our announcements and our strategy there. It is very much an experience where we want to provide the different offerings like Audible and Amazon Music and things of that nature, but not in a takeover fashion.
Jason, you were talking a little bit earlier about the importance of the customer experience at the center of all of this, and not just sort of charging people for things, willy-nilly. And industry stakeholders will recall an infamous attempt to put heated seats behind a subscription. How should companies in this space be thinking about price gouging concerns from consumers?
Yeah, so I think that where we are with the software-defined vehicle is that as Paul joked about, is that there is this sort of future vision that I think that in a way it is right here, right now. You can do that, but in terms of price gouging, people are going to pay for an experience. They're going to pay for convenience. They're going to pay for something that they identify with when it comes to a brand, right? And in fact, that's where a lot of the premiums can be extracted. If you represent your brand digitally as strongly as people identify with the beautiful design, the propulsion system, all that sort of thing, people will actually want to stay connected if you provide a compelling environment. But around price gouging, I think that's where there's a little bit of cynicism that creeps into, man, we've got to make some profit from this. And it's like, why don't we charge them for heated seats, a subscription? Unfortunately, that's something that people say, hang on, the hardware's there. It's all, so people will react to that. But if you give something that's a rich experience, that gives people convenience, maybe gives them time back, I think that you'll find that folks will actually want to pay for that.
I want to add a few points, because we talk about price and features, but that comes kind of late. But later, there are fundamental topics that we need to address. How much hardware do we think is sufficient? How much hardware is the right level of hardware for the functions that are going to come 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road? Who knows that answer? We don't. And we have to have that fine balance. And what happens if we lose that balance? Then the price is too much for consumers to pay. So we got to worry about that a little bit. Then when you talk about monetizing and so on, if you take consumer application like your smartphone, we change our phones if it's very slow or if it needs memory. We change our phones right away. We don't think about it. And say a phone costs like $1,000 and we approximately change our phones every 18 months. But it took a long time to get here. 25 years ago, we still had landlines for which we paid for hardware. We never think of doing that for our software upgrades in our car. And now we have evolved from landlines to phones to smartphones, and we are okay to pay for these things. So it takes some time. And then the question is, what can you monetize? And maybe if you provide features that are value creative, like adding more safety and so on and so forth, then maybe everyone wants to spend to make their families a little safer. So these are things that we need to think about. And we are nowhere close to that, as Paul had mentioned. Then what is the next step? We are talking in leaps where we need to go in steps. And optimize the hardware from what we have today, to make maybe zone controllers, to reduce the weight of the vehicle, reduce the amount of cables, amount of copper, and so on. You make things more efficient, and then you go to the next progressive step, my opinion.
No.
Everyone wants to jump in on this one. Let's hear from Paul first.
Yeah, no, I want to comment. I agree with you that when you get to a point where your hardware is agnostic, and let's just talk, the title is, how do we make money with software, right? How does the OEM make money? How does the tiers make money? First of all, there's a couple things you can do with driving dynamics, which is very simple. You can have a way that you handle your actuation, your steering, your braking, your suspension, and you should never really get a penny from that as a tier one from the consumer. We should work with our OEMs so they can offer those features. And that's something that you can do today in a very smart way. When you start thinking about different services, if you look into fleets, or if you look into all on the highway trucks that are running today, you have a lot of good opportunities in an environment of sustainability for maintenance, for driver activity, for uptime. And what we're starting to see is in a connected vehicle or a software-defined vehicle or a system, that if you're able to offer those services to people that need it to make money. So if that truck needs to run 12 hours a day with a guy that has, or a person that has the right tools, we see that that's really starting to pull the industry a little bit. And I think that that's what's going to happen is you're never going to be able to force somebody to pay for something that they think they should have. But if you can provide something to people that, and this is novel, of course, that they don't have, then they'll start paying for it, especially in mobility, especially when you can promise uptime on vehicles, when you can promise to a rental company smoke detection or something where it creates revenue streams for them in a very simple software-defined way. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the challenge I'm dealing with, not only how we work with our OEM customers, but how we go business to consumer and how you do it in a way that's fast enough. And again, not this dreamscape environment, these real hardcore money-earning revenue streams that make transportation and mobility better.
Paul Thomas is president of Bosch North America. Aruna Anand is president and CEO of Amovio North America. Alan Wexler is senior vice president of strategy and transformation at General Motors. And Jason Jameson is chief customer officer at Here Technologies. They spoke with Automotive News Tech and Innovation reporter Molly Boygon at Automotive News Congress in Detroit. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Urvash Kakaria and Vince Bond Jr. for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on tech and innovation, automaker partnerships, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a conversation with Automotive News Asia editor Hans Greimel about the 10-year anniversary of Hyundai Group's luxury brand Genesis and where it goes from here. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailyDrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.